Okay, so today's agenda, as I pinged, it's about manage instance, private endpoint, and DNS alias. It might sound a new topic for you guys, but I will make it sure it is very simple and you will be able to understand it perfectly well. Okay, so first of all, before diving into the topic, first you need to understand the connectivity methods to manage instance. That is the first thing you have to understand. So when I go to the manage instance, so I have my manage instance here. I'll pull this down. So this is my manage instance, which is running right now. Okay, so when we go to the manage instance, there is something called as networking section. Okay, under the networking section, you can see there is one thing by name public endpoint, which will be disabled by default in your environments because of the security risks. But if you wanted to connect, there is, I'm just letting you know the different possibilities. Okay, so whether you use it or not, it depends upon your environment. Of course, strictly following the rules, security guidelines, we should not be enabling the public endpoint, but I'm just letting you know the different ways of connecting to the managed instance. Okay, so this is the first way, public endpoint, and this will be on the port 3342. So the port 3342 should be enabled for us to connect to manage instance from your virtual machines or from your on-premises. Okay, that is the first thing. If you have any questions, you can stop me, no problem. Okay, so the first thing is about public endpoint, where you will be connecting to your managed instance from your on-premises or from your virtual machines. And for this to, if you wanted to connect with public endpoint, you don't need any extra setup. Okay, it comes naturally. So what does this statement mean? Any extra setup? So I will let you know. So this is my local machine. Okay, so this laptop is my local machine, and this is Azure VM. Okay, this is Azure VM. So if I wanted to connect, if I wanted to connect from my local machine to the managed instance via the public endpoint, I need not have any gateways or something like that. Okay, so I will show you quickly. So you can connect from anywhere. So cmd SQL cmd -s, and this is the the server name and the port number. So it will be always 3342. It's not possible for you to change 3342 as well. So that you have to remember. So SQL cmd. Okay, sorry, I misspelled it. SQL cmd -s. So usually, if I wanted to connect from on-premises, what should I need? Anyone knows this? I forgot the password. Hello, are you guys there? Are you able to hear me, or any issues?
No, we are.
You're able to hear me, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So if I wanted to connect from on-premises to the managed instance, do I need any special setup like private point-to-site connectivity or site-to-site or express route, something like that? Where is the hash here? Anyone knows this? If I wanted to connect from my on-premises to the managed instance, do I need any special setup, any connectivity like point-to-site or site-to-site or express route? Just remember, guys, if you wanted to connect anything from your on-premises to your Azure SQL or Azure managed instance, then definitely you need some kind of setup, like whether it is point-to-site or site-to-site express route. Something should be there. Without that, you just can't connect. Okay, that is the first and fundamental rule that you have to understand. Whether it is Azure SQL or whether it is Azure MI, you need some kind of mechanism in either of these three. In real time, definitely it will be express route. If that is not possible, they will go with site to site. Point to site is not affordable because you cannot create point to site across all the machines. It's not possible. So it will be either express route or site to site. Is this point clear before I move on? Everyone is silent. Express route, we need VPN. Yes, we need VPN. That's true. Let's connect with this password first. I'm getting error. Admin 143. I have the password. I think I'm not able to type it properly. I think admin 143 $. It's been many days. Even I forgot. 1 second, guys. Let me rethink. This is the correct password. Okay, now I am trying to connect from my local laptop, to Azure MI. Okay, see, I'm able to connect. And I don't have any setup. I don't have point to site. I don't have site to site. I don't have express route. Still, I'm able to connect to my managed instance happily. So why it is possible? It is possible only because we are using the public endpoint, just like Azure SQL. In my previous classes, I have clearly shown a demo like the different ways of connecting to Azure SQL. So in the similar fashion, this on Azure SQL, when you enable that rules like firewall rules. So if you enable the local laptop's IP, you will be able to connect. If you remember, I mean, it's long time, so I'm not sure if you are able to remember it or not. So there is one video of mine where I discussed everything. In a similar fashion, today we are discussing about managed instance. So for managed instance, if I wanted to connect from my laptop using public endpoint, I don't need any of the setups what I discussed, like point to site or express route. Nothing is required. You can directly connect since you are enabling the public endpoint. Public endpoint will expose the public IP address and it will connect using that public endpoint. You can connect happily, no problem. So if I just select at the rate version or something like that, you will get the results happily. Okay, so this is from my local laptop. And now coming back to my VM, Azure VM. Okay, I don't have any connectivity between this Azure VM, VNET, and SQL Managed Instance VNET. So everything is about VNET, guys. So this is all about virtual network. So if I wanted to talk from one virtual network to another virtual network, we need to have connectivity. So if I show you, so my machine SQL N1, this is the machine from where I'm trying to connect to my MI. So this is the VNet. SQL N1 VNet is the virtual network. Okay, so if I go to my virtual networks, so for one virtual network to talk with another virtual network, we need some kind of connectivity. Okay, so that can be done using different ways. For the moment, I don't have any connectivity. Let me show you. So I don't have any peerings. If you see, this is empty. And for my managed instance, if I go to my managed instance and if I go to my managed instance virtual network, and if I go over there to the peerings, nothing is there. So no connectivity between these two VNets means my virtual machine and MI, they are not being connected. But still, if I wanted to connect to my MI, I can connect happily using the public endpoint. This is the public endpoint. If you see the public in the connection string, then it means public endpoint and it will be always associated with the port 3342. So I'm able to connect. I'm able to connect from my laptop and I'm able to connect from my Azure virtual machine without any hiccups. Okay. Now coming back, is this clear, guys? The first 2 points before I move on. Okay. If there are no questions, I assume it is clear. So now coming back to manage instance and going over here, and this is our host, right? This is our connection. So what does this mean? What does this mean? So when you go to the architecture of Azure Managed Instance, we have 3 ways to connect. One is VNET Local Endpoint, the other one is public endpoint, and the last one is private endpoint. So just now we discussed about public endpoint. Okay, just now we discussed about public endpoint. Now we are coming back to VNET Local Endpoint. Okay, so this is the default way to connect to our Azure MI. This is the default way to connect to our Azure MI. And let's see if we are able to connect with the local endpoint, VNet local endpoint. So for that, we just go to the manage instance and grab the host name and try to connect. So I'm just trying to connect from my local laptop and see what happens. So CLS. Oh, not sorry. This is not public. So I should not be making use of public. I should remove this. And I should remove the public keyword. So the one with which we are trying to connect is VNet local endpoint. Okay, so let me copy the password and see if that connects. So it is now trying to connect and it will never work. It will never work. Why? Because if you wanted to connect to the VNet local endpoint of MI, so I'm showing you the different ways. This is the second way. So for this to happen, definitely you should have gateway. Means networking gateways. Like what I said, point to site will make use of gateway, and site to site will make use of gateways, and express route also will make use of gateways. So without creating gateway from my local laptop, it's not possible to connect. Okay. So if I wanted to achieve this from my on-premises, this concept remains the same. Whether it is local laptop or on-premises, it concept remains the same. So you have to have some kind of connectivity, which is not there for the moment. So that's the reason I'm not able to connect to my MI using the VNet local endpoint. And how about my Azure virtual machine? Will I be able to connect to my Azure virtual machine using the private, not private, the VNet local endpoint? Let's see that. So this is the VNet local endpoint, and I'm trying to connect. Same thing. You will not be able to connect because this VNet, I mean my virtual machine VNet and manage instance VNet are not connected to each other. Since they are not connected to each other, it's not possible for us to connect to manage instance. Is this clear or questions? Okay. So I will take this as granted. So now if I wanted to connect to my manage instance from my virtual machine, what should I do? So I need to make the connectivity happen between the virtual machine and MI. So for that, what I have to do, I have to go to the virtual network of MI, or else I can go to the virtual network of my machine and I need to peer them. So I can choose either of them. It is our choice. So go to the machine, sorry, not machine, the VNet. So go to the VNet and go to the peerings and now add the peering. So as I'm doing from virtual machine, I will say VM to MI connectivity, just name and the counterpart. So MI to VM connectivity. So I should choose the MI network here because I'm doing it from SQL VNet. I mean virtual machines network. So my MI is part of, let me see what it is. This one, VNet underscore MI new. Let me double check because if I do any mistakes, it will not be possible. So manage instance is part of VNet underscore MI new. Okay, so let's do this. Let's go to the VNet and let's go to the peerings and add the peering. Just pass it to name. For the moment, I'm just giving test 1, test 2, but in real time, you should be following the best guidelines. So I'll say test 20, anything. So I have to choose the VNet of my manage instance, which is VNet hyphen MI new. Okay. So now I have to say allow VNet. That's it. So if we just click on add, so peering will happen between these two virtual networks. So once it gets connected, I will be able to connect to my MI using the, see, I got this error before peering because those two networks are not connected. I got the same error of what I got for from my local laptop. It's almost same, like network error, could not open, named pipes, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now coming back. Now, since my peering got established, if I try to connect using the VNet local endpoint, it should happen. So let's go to the counterpart and see whether the peering has happened or not. I'm going to MI's virtual network and going to peering section, and this is now connected. Okay, so now I should not be having any problems. So let me come over here, and if I try to connect, it should work. So let's wait for it. It's just got created, right? It might throw an error for the moment, but after 1 or 2 minutes, it should work. Let's wait. If you have any questions in the meantime, you can ask me. Yeah, it got connected. See, this is the difference. This is public endpoint. As you can clearly see, this is public endpoint. We don't have the public keyword here. This is VNET local endpoint. Okay, there's a lot of difference between these two. So in general, in real time, you will not enable public endpoints, and it is not possible for us to connect to MI using the public endpoint because of security risks. This is how you will connect your MI. Okay, and MI, unlike Azure SQL, is having virtual network. Virtual network will be there for my MI, and since I have the virtual network, I will have the inbound rules and outbound rules as well. So for example, if I go to my virtual network, okay, so if I go to the connected devices, see, internally my MI is having some load balancer. See, subnet is managed instance and is having some load balancer. Forget about that. So let's go to the resource group, and I'll show you. Where is the resource group? Yeah, my demo. And if you see, I have the route tables, I have the virtual networks, I have the network security groups, everything. So let's go to the network security. I think this is the one. So we have the rules in place, inbound security rules and outbound security rules. Since I enabled 3342, I'm able to connect to my managed instance with the public endpoint because I enabled this rule. If I disable this, then you will not be able to connect. And also we need 1433. On top of it, also we need 11,000 to 1199. This I have demonstrated in my previous videos, and I disabled these inbound rules, and I've shown the various errors what we can get if we play with this port numbers, if we block these port numbers. Okay, I don't want to show that again, so I'm not going with this. So I'm just letting you know we have the inbound rules and outbound security rules since this is managed instance. But when you take Azure SQL, we don't have the concept of virtual network over there, the dedicated virtual network. Okay, that concept is not there. Now coming back, there is one more connectivity, and this has been recently introduced. That is nothing but private endpoint. So when I have this VNET local endpoint, why should I have private endpoint again? Is there any requirement to have a private endpoint? Why should I need private endpoint? That should be our next question, right? Public endpoint, we understood this is a security risk because you are able to reach from internet. Since you are able to reach from internet, this is not at all good. So they will disable the connectivity using the public endpoint. The other way is VNET local endpoint, which we just discussed. From on-premises, we need some kind of mechanism, site to site or point to site or express route. From Azure VM, you should be having peerings. Peerings should be there for the connectivity to happen. So now, since we just went ahead with VNET local endpoint and public endpoint, so why I need private endpoint? That is our next question. Okay, so private endpoint, if you wanted to understand when to use private endpoints, this is the best article because this is from Microsoft thing. So we have different kinds of setups, and if you need these kind of things, we need to have private endpoints. So just a question, private endpoints, do you think private endpoints is there for Azure SQL? I know people are not talking, just asking, at least you can chat. Is private endpoint is there for Azure SQL? Anyone would like to go ahead? Okay, private endpoint is there, and just to let you know, guys, private endpoint it's there for Azure SQL from long time, and for private endpoint for Azure MI, they recently introduced it. I think just 3 months back. Okay, so if you wanted to have private endpoint, the use cases, there is one article. There are many articles, I guess. It's there on. Let me check. I can show you that as well. Just a second. If you wanted to read, there are 3 articles on that. So let me show you. Yeah. So you can watch this scenarios with private endpoints, advanced scenarios with private endpoints, non-scenarios with private endpoints. All these categories falls into use cases of private endpoints for managed instance. Okay, so we cannot go into each and every setup because I cannot create app. This is not possible to show you up. That's the reason I'm not picking this up. But if you are interested, you can read all these types. Hub and spoke, I discussed this in my classes. So and ISP, this is for vendors. So this is one more scenario. So I think we have almost 7 or 8 use cases of private endpoints. So I will try to show up a few of them because I can show linked server replication and auto failover groups. So I will discuss the private endpoints, and I will try to configure with private endpoints rather than VNet local endpoints, because we already discussed these topics using VNet local endpoints. So I don't want to repeat that. So I will show you those concepts later. So I'm just letting you know these are the different use cases of private endpoint. Okay. So any questions before I move on with private endpoint, and I will show you how to connect with private endpoint as well. Okay. So before going into private endpoint, I would like to discuss one more scenario. Usually, if you see the manage instance name, it will be something with random name, right? If I go to my manage instance, and if I click on manage instance, so it will be the manage instance name what you supply. This is the name what I supplied, and some DNS. So this is nothing but some DNS entry, and this is our regular database.windows.net, which is a suffix for any platform as a service objects. So database.windows.net, if it is storage, it will be something else. So it will be always associated with this entry. But if I don't want to make use of this names, I wanted something like minew.cts.com, minew.tcs.com, minew.yourdomainname.com. So if that is the case, how to achieve that is the next scenario that I would like to discuss before going into private endpoints. Can anyone at least say yes or no? Because I don't know if I'm able to hear you. That's the reason I'm asking someone to just talk. Yes or no, something.
Yes, Tom.
Okay.
Yes, Vamsi.
People are there. Okay, I got some confidence. Okay, so the scenario is usually this is how your MI names will look like. But if you wanted to have your own domain name, what should I do? Okay, so my mission, the mission where I connected, it's part of some domain name. So it is, let me show you the domain name. So my mission is part of sophos.com. Okay, if you wanted to clearly see that, let me show you. I go to the PC and properties. This is 2022, guys, so there will be few changes. So if you see this name, so SQL node 1, the node name, and my domain name is sophos.com. Sophos.com is the domain name what I have given for my mission. So in your use cases or in your environments, definitely you will be having your own domains. But say, for example, the client has come up with a requirement where he wants to have an alias name for your managed instance, not like this minew dot manage instance name dot blah blah blah, this DNS dot database dot. No, he is not interested in going with this naming convention. He would like to just have his manage instance name dot your domain name. Okay, so that if that is the case, in my case, it will be minew.sophos.com. I don't need all this stuff. So what should I do for that? That is our next use case. Why I am teaching this, in my company, I got a requirement where I have to create manage instance, and I did that. And they have a specific requirement where they wanted to have the same name of the VM what they have. Means, for example, the old mission. So, for example, if the Azure VM name is something like SQL 2020, just imagine. So that is my node name. So my manage instance name is something like minew. So they wanted the same name SQL 2020 dot the domain name for manage instance also. Okay, let me draw some diagram. Otherwise, it will be very difficult for you to understand. Okay, imagine this is my machine and this is my manage instance, to make you clear. Okay, so imagine my machine name is node1. Just imagine node1 dot sophos dot com. Okay, this is my machine name, and my manage instance name is something like mi let's take the same name for the moment. What is that? Okay, this is my manage instance name. So my requirement is, client's requirement is, he has to have something like the old name should be there. Means instead of mi new dot DNS dot database dot windows dot net, he needs the same name. Means he needs node1 dot sophos dot com. He needs the same name. He, because he cannot change the connection strings, he is not aware of the places where he needs to update his connection strings. So the client is having such peculiar requirement. He doesn't know where to update and all. So what he's trying to achieve is, if I can give him the same name of what they have on their on premises for mi also, then it will work for them. So that is the requirement. So definitely now I have to change my mi name from this name to node1.sophos.com. That was my requirement. Okay. Before I show up my requirement, let us first try to change the DNS name or the MI name, and let's try to create an alias for our manage instance. Okay. Is this clear before I move on? Okay.
Yes, Vamsi.
So how to change the name? So I am not an AD admin or Windows admin. So I'm just a DBA. So, but I'm letting you know how to do that. Okay. There is one important thing that you have to understand, guys. So there is only one article what is there on the internet, only from John Sterrett. I don't know how to spell it, sorry. So he has written something, and I'm just following the instructions of what he has written. He has not written completely of what needs to be done, but still I understood the concept and I'm letting you know. Since we have the connectivity from MI to this one, so what he's trying to say is you have to create the alias. So to create an alias, where should I create my alias? Definitely in on the Active Directory machine. So let's try to connect to the Active Directory machine first. I think I have not connected. SQL DC is 40.115. So let's try to connect web server. So as you can see, this is sqldc.sophos.com. Sophos.com is the domain name. Let's go and try to create an alias. You can use shortcut for opening the DNS manager, or you can use the icon as well. From here. So you can go and just type DNS manager. So let me show you DNS. Yeah, DNS app. Again, we are not Active Directory admins, but still I would like to show you how it looks. Okay, so if you see here, I have just created an entry. So I will delete this and I will show you from the scratch. Before deleting, I'm just letting you know. So this is the alias name. So mi new is my manage instance name. And for this, I am giving mi new.domainname.com. Okay, your manage instance name dot your domain name.com instead of this lengthy name what we get by default when we create manage instance. Okay, so let's delete this entry and I will copy this one, this entry, copy, and I'm deleting. I can show you from the scratch. Okay, you have to create a new alias. So what you have to do, you have to create a let's follow his article and I will show you. So you can see, right, so he's asking us to do the same thing. Okay, so you have to create an A record. It's called as A record. Even if you don't understand the topics, it's okay, because these things will be done by your Active Directory team. You don't need to worry about this, but I'm just letting you know. Okay, so let's come here. Okay, so not A record, this is alias. So we have to create alias, right? So new alias I have to choose. Okay, the alias name is mi new, because manage instance name is what I have to give here. Okay, so now instead of the fully qualified domain name like what I get, I will be able to connect with minew.sophos.com. You just need to create an entry here inside the DNS manager of on your systems. So as we don't have access to these machines, it will be done by your Active Directory team. Okay, this is minew.domainname.com. This is the complete name. Okay, I just created that, and let's go to the article and see what else needs to be done. So in saying go to your Azure Managed Instance Virtual Network, and then you have to add the entry of your domain controller, right? Because if you don't do that, by default it will be user defined. So let me show you what I mean. So if I go to Manage Instance, and if I go to the virtual network, and if I go to the DNS, so it will be default Azure provided. So if it is default, it will be associated with this IP 168.63.129.16. Just to let you know, guys, if something is default, it means it will be always associated with this IP. Okay, that is the default DNS server IP for Azure. Now I have to change this. If I don't do this, I will not be able to connect. So before changing, I will show you. Let's try to connect with minew.sophos.com and see if that works first. minew.sophos.com, and I'll get the password from here. And if I try to connect, still it is working because I have not cleared the what can I say, DNS flush. I have not done that. That is the reason it is still working. But what you have to do in real time is you have to change this from here. You have to add the entry of your domain controller IP, domain controller or DNS server IP. You have to change this to custom, and you have to do that. If you don't do that, it will not work. So I'm just letting you know how to do this activity. Just go over here and add the domain controller IP. Of course, as I said, you will not be having access to your domain controller or your DNS server, so it is not possible. But in real time, that this work will be done by them, and once they say it is done, you will be able to connect your MI using the alias name. As you can see, now I am able to connect with minew.sophos.com, my domain name. So this is the managed instance name, and this is my domain name. So that's how you will be creating the alias for your managed instance. It need not to be this lengthy name like database.windows.net. It is not required. We can create alias for our managed instance, and this is how it looks. Any questions here? Okay, so now you can see, right, public endpoint, private, VNET local endpoint, and DNS alias connection to MI. 3 different ways. I'm just letting you know, and finally I will show you the private endpoint. Okay, so let's go to the private endpoint, and I will show you the steps that needs to be done. Okay, so
will it work on Azure VM?
Will it work on Azure VM? What does it mean?
The .com which you have given, right, domain name.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm connecting from VM only, right?
Okay.
Because managed instance is platform as a service, which means that there is no operating system. We can connect to managed instance or Azure SQL only from SSMS. It can be from our local laptops, or it can be from Azure VMs, or it can be from on-premises. If it is from on-premises, as I told you, if it is public endpoint, you need not require any express route or something. And if it is VNET local endpoint, you should need any of the 3 options what I discussed. And if it is something like your domain name.com with prefixed with your managed instance name, then you have to follow the instructions what I said. You have to create an alias, and once you create the alias inside the DNS server, then you will be able to connect from your
Before
VM.
that, we have to rename that existing server name, right? Because if you want to use the same.
Coming back to that, there is one catch here. Okay, so thanks for your question. So if you wanted to have something different than the MI name, for example, I have created with MI new, right? MI new, and client requirement is to have node1.sophos.com instead of MI new. Okay, so imagine you deleted this machine and you wanted to have node1 in place of MI new. Okay, so if you have this machine running, you cannot have two names, right? It's not possible to create entries with two similar names. So if that is not possible, imagine you deallocated this machine and you would like to make use of the same name. So instead of mi new, I would like to have node1. If that is the case, it is not possible, guys. So that is very important that you have to understand. So he has mentioned this somewhere here. Let me show you. Yeah, this line. Hello, just read this line. This is very important. The alias needs to have the same name as your managed instance. Okay. So I have created the alias when I go to my DNS server. So I created the alias with mi new. That is my managed instance name. You cannot make use of some other name here. So if you try to do that, it will not work. For example, if I say mi new 20, okay, let me create one more entry, or I will delete this and I will try to show up the new one. It will not work, but I'm just letting you know. Mi new test. I'll say mi new test, and let me copy that name. So it has to be the same name, otherwise it will not work. Let me get the name, copy. Okay, now it is there. So if I try to connect with mi new test.sophos.com, it should not work. It will not work. Mi new test.sophos.com. Let me copy the password. Unfortunately, for mi, it should be 16 characters length. Anything less than that, it will not accept. So if I try to do, so it fails. Okay. So the login failed. It's not possible for you to connect. And even he says to make use of trust server certificate, which we did, but still it will not work. Even if I remove this and if I try to connect, it will not work. You will get this error all the time. Okay. So if you are creating the alias name should be the same name of what you have for your managed instance. Otherwise, it will not work. That you have to remember this point. Any questions here? Okay. So let's move on with managed instance. Just a second, guys. Just give me 1 second. I expected a lot of questions today, but everyone is silent, which is something fishy. Either I'm not teaching well or you know these concepts prior. Okay, let's go to private endpoint. So now we have to create private endpoints. So why we need private endpoints? As I told you, you have to watch out those 2 articles on the internet to understand why we need private endpoints. Okay, before creation of private endpoints, I will do one thing, guys. So I am going to remove the peering. I am just going to remove the peering. So without peering, I will not be able to connect. As you know, I have shown you clearly, without peering, I will not be able to connect to my MI. But now I'm going to remove the peering and I will still be able to connect. That's the magic of private endpoint, and I will show you that. Let's go to the peering, and I'm going to delete this peering. Okay, it's there on the other side, right? Peering test 1 will be here. Delete. Okay, so now there is no connection, and if I try to connect, it will not work since I'm going to delete the peering. Let's wait for it. But still, I will be able to connect without peering also using the private endpoint. That's the beauty. Why I need private endpoint? Imagine you have some different networks, 10 virtual networks. Okay, so imagine a kind of scenario where you have test environment, test VNet, UAT VNet, dev VNet, pre-production VNet, production VNet. So imagine there are so many VNets. So if that is the case, you have to integrate everything with your MI, right? You have to create peering with your MI. So imagine this is my MI. So if that is the case, I have to establish VNet from here to here, here to here. From every environment, I have to create peerings for this to work. So it's going to be very tough if you have multiple environments. So instead of creating these many peerings and these many connectivity things, I can just create a private endpoint on this, and I can link this private endpoint to all of these virtual networks. That's the beauty of private endpoints. So that is what I'm going to show you now. So I deleted the peering, but still I will be able to connect to my MI using the private endpoint. So it got deleted. Okay. So now if I go to my manage instance and if I try to connect using this VNET local endpoint, it will not work. So let me show you that part. So now it will fail because there is no connectivity. I think it will fail in just 1 or 2 minutes. So let's start the private endpoint creation and I'll show you. Where is this, man? Why I'm not getting that minimize button? Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is the private endpoint. So not for this, for the manage instance I have to create. So let's choose the manage instance and then go to the private endpoints. So this is the private endpoint connection. Okay. Now I have to create private endpoint. This private endpoint creation and Azure SQL private endpoint creation looks same, but there are some extra steps that needs to be done. So if you would like to watch out how to carry out this private endpoint for your Azure SQL, I think it is there somewhere. Just let me show you the part. Private endpoint. I think it is something with the name different ways of connecting to Azure SQL. Should be somewhere. I'll just show you. Yeah, this one. Different ways of connecting to Azure MI and a difference between proxy. So this video will help you to understand the different ways and different scenarios. These 2 videos, you can watch out for that. And now let's go to our MI and let's try to create the private endpoint. So this is the private endpoint. As I've told you, now it will not work because I removed the connectivity. So it will try to connect and it will fail. So let's wait for that to fail. In the meantime, we'll try to create the private endpoint. It is taking so much. Okay, internet connection problem. Okay, so private endpoint, I came here. Okay, now what is the first step I have to do? I have to pass the name. I have to pass the name. So go over here and I will say managed instance private endpoint. That is the name what I am giving. And this region should be the one where your virtual network of VMs are placed. Okay, so you have to choose the virtual missions region, virtual missions region over here. Okay, all my missions are part of North Europe, but in real time it will be different. So just be aware of that. Okay, so let's go. And it will automatically pick up our MI. You need not do anything. Microsoft private endpoints are smart enough. It can pick up the MI automatically. But if you have any Azure SQL, it might come over, not here. If you have Azure SQL and you are trying to create Azure SQL private endpoint, it picks up your Azure SQL server. And since we are doing this for managed instance, it is picking up the managed instance. Okay. Now the next thing is virtual network. Okay, virtual network. Here, just to be on a safer side, I took these screenshots as well. I mean, to just to show you up. Here I have to choose the virtual network of my VM. So my VM is part of SQL VNET, and this is the VNET for which I would like to connect. Okay, so this is the virtual missions VNET. It's not managed instance. Nothing needs to be done from managed instance VNET. Everything should be done from the other side, like the VM side, not from managed instance side. Okay, next is DNS. You will create. I will show you how to create the DNS later. So that's it. Only 3 things. First thing, just pass the name and choose the region. And second thing, it will automatically pick up your managed instance. You need not do anything. Third thing, this should be your virtual networks, virtual missions VNet, virtual missions VNet. Okay, VNet and the corresponding subnet. If you have any multiple subnets, you have to choose the corresponding subnet. I don't have any subnets over here, so it is with the default. That's it. DNS, it will not come now. If you have created prior, it will come, but I have not created anything, so it will be empty and game over. So tags, it should be always be done when it should be there always when you are doing this in real time. This is just a demo, so I'm just clicking on review and create. We are done. So click on create. It will try to create the private endpoint. It will take roughly 2 to 3 minutes if I'm not wrong. When I practiced this, it took 2 minutes, I believe. But if you are lucky enough, it might finish in a minute or so. So any questions before the creation of this? So did you understand the different ways of connecting to MI? So as you can see, these are the 3 ways. VNET endpoint, public endpoint, and the final one, what I'm going to show is private endpoint. VNET is done, public is done. Now we are doing private. Okay, this is how you should be able to understand the topics, guys. So you should understand, first you should read the Microsoft articles, and then you have to grab the concepts and you have to practice for yourself. That is what I am doing. Let's wait. I think this, yeah, this is done. Okay, now I have to create DNS configuration. So let's go there, and I have to create a DNS which is not there. I have to create one DNS now. So in real time, you might ask me like who will be performing this task. So it will be done by your respective teams. I cannot comment on this part. It will be done maybe by your AD team or Windows team, something like that. But if you need private endpoint, these are the steps. So if you feel that is not required, it's okay, leave it. Or else if you wanted to understand, this is what we should do. Okay, so resource group is MI demo, and the name, not MI demo, it should be my this one. Okay, and the name here, when you are creating the name, okay, it should be something like this. Let me show you the creation. So it is something like your name, whatever the name, what you pass, and then the dns.database.windows.net for managed instance. So it is very tricky, guys. It might sound very complicated as well, but if you don't understand, leave it, because this will be done by your respective teams. But what I'm trying to project here is the different ways of connecting to our managed instance, and the final way I'm showing. So once this is done, I will be able to connect to my managed instance from my VM without peerings. That is what you should understand. Rest of the things, if you don't understand, it's you can ignore as well, no problem. So let's give some name. Private link dot something. So I'm just giving private link dot. So let me grab that name of what I have. So see, it got failed. It got failed because we removed the peering. So let me get this part. Okay, and pass this. Okay, so that is how you should do, and then click on create. I know this is not our comfort zone. Leave it if you don't understand, but let's try to understand the concepts only. After this, I'm planning to take SQL on Linux, guys. If you're interested, you can ping me after the class. So SQL on Linux, I will be teaching from basics. Don't expect that I'm going to teach everything from the scratch for Linux. I expect you to learn something, and I will just be focusing on SQL part. So I will show you some multi-subnet always on, single subnet always on, SQL cluster, SQL log shipping. So these are the things that I would like to proceed. So you might ask me why SQL on Linux. If you know SQL on Linux, it makes our life easy when you are dealing with Kubernetes or Docker. That's the main reason. Okay, now virtual network, I have to create the link between them. will be MI new. That's the name what I should pass. And this is the IP address of my virtual networks VM's virtual network. Okay, so here I have to pass for that. Let me get that entry. Of course, it might sound, as I told you, it might sound complicated for you. If you don't understand, leave it, because our main purpose is just to understand the concept, as these things will be done by your respective teams. Let me grab that entry. 1 second. .0.8. Okay. Okay, and then finally we need to link this as well. I'll say some testing. Now to link this to this one. So these are some few steps are there. So we just need to follow the steps. And once that is done, we'll be able to connect. So let's wait for that to get completed. And once that is done, we are done with the class. Okay. So now if I go and if I try to connect, it should work. If something is not working, it will take few minutes or few seconds. I mean, few minutes for that to work. Okay, my main intention is if you create private endpoint, you can connect your managed instance without creating the peerings between the networks, without having any type of connection. Still, our managed instance, we can connect to the managed instance using the private endpoint without the peering, without the connectivity. Okay, so that is my main intention. Any questions here? I don't know how many how many of you have understood this concept, but let me know if you're not able to.
Also one doubt.
Yeah.
While we are creating the private endpoint, at the end you have given the virtual network, right, to link it. So if you wanted to connect from other virtual network, that same private endpoint can't be used, right? You need to create one more endpoint.
That is the doubt what I have for myself. I will create one more mission and I will keep that in another VNet, and let's try to see how it works. I have that doubt with me as well. Let me be open with you. Because if I pass wrong answers, that is not the right way. I have that doubt with me. Let's try to create one more VNet. I'll create the missions and let's try to connect and see how that works.
Okay.
So
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Even I messed up the entry here, so I should delete this. It should not be causing problem. Okay, any other doubts, guys? So did you understand the main stuff, like the different ways of connecting to managed instance, private endpoints, public endpoint, and VNet local endpoint? I think so. If you have any questions, you can ping me after the class. I think it's too late in India, so I will wind off. So I will catch you maybe on weekend with some other class. Okay, Thanks, guys. Thanks for your time.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.